Hey guys, my name is Nick B, and let's jump into the futures overview. So, starting off with the Forex Factory economic calendar, let's take a look at what we have. Monday's pretty quiet. Again, I don't really pay attention too intimately to the orange label news. My focus is really red label, but it's good to know that possibly maybe something might give us volatility during the week. So, Tuesday, eyes are on consumer confidence at 10 a.m. We also have FOMC member. Well, that usually doesn't really give us too much swing in the market, but that might stir something up. Wednesday, preliminary GDP at 8:30 a.m. might get some movement there. Thursday, OPEC, JMCC meetings, JMMC meetings, excuse me, all day at 8:30. Core PCI. PCE price index, unemployment claims. Okay. And then last but not least, Friday, we have ISM manufacturing PMI. And then at 11 a.m., Fed Chair Powell speaks. Okay. So it's going to be an interesting week. Maybe we get an opportunity to get out of some of the channels that we've been kind of stuck between. Um, let's close this out and let's, one second, let me share my screen. Okay, perfect. All right, so let's start with, yes, perfect. We're right on it. Let me clear the screen and we'll start from scratch. Let me get rid of this. Okay. So as you know previously, I mean this is the 1 year one daily. We used to pull up the 2 year daily to get a bigger picture, base our levels off of the previous lower highs and lower lows, but now really our attention has turned to the current trend and the current channels that price action has been carving out over here. So I can keep the 1 year daily. That's fine to kind of tell me give me an idea of direction. So we'll go with, as always, starting off plotting the resistance all-time highs. This level right here that we previously got to 45.64. Well, it's 45.65. Let me adjust that. That's a key player in terms of whether we can get a continuation higher or not. We've been dancing around it for the last week. So let's see if into this week we're already kind of below it. Let's see if we end up coming down towards 45.40 first, and then below 45.40 I'm looking at 4500. The true trade setup for me, at least a signal worthy one, would be below 4500. I think we can easily target the breakout of 44.30. 44.40 is where I would set my take profit, but I think that this would be an area of interest if we begin breaking below 4500. So that would be in terms of downside. Also, the reason I'm picking 4500 is it is the last low that price made before continuing up higher, and below this low here at 4500, 4502, I mean there's really nothing here slowing price action down from bucking or maybe slowing down. And again, 4500 is that round numbers, that psychological support resistance, support level. So if we break below that support, again, it's a green flag, it's a green light for us to target 44.30. 44.40 would be my take profit, and then we'd go from there. I still do think we are due for a pullback, but again, anything can go. We might get that breakout, we might get that breakdown. We just have to see what happens. What happens in terms of breaking down or breaking out. In terms of upside, again, we were fortunate enough to ride along above 45.40 and secure 45.65 into last week, I believe. But I wouldn't feel too confident of going long above 45.65 and targeting 46.34 because it's kind of like a chop channel. I mean, it's not real. You won't really get any real direction. It's not kind of a green light for continuation. It's just another floor that we would have to get through to then see a continuation, which would be 46.34 breakout. For me, I would even feel bold enough to go long at 46.30, target 4700 to the upside. Also, the reason we would be targeting 4700 to the upside is if we pull up ES on the 2 year daily. I wonder if that shows. Yeah, right here. Actually, this would be it. 4711 right here in this corner. I like to base my targets when we start breaking above higher highs, making new higher highs. And let's say there's price action history previously. The way I determine what a reasonable target would be to the upside is identifying the first all-time high that price action might have made, and then kind of seeing what the history around that level was. So we did reach 47.10. When was this? In December of 2021. Sheesh. And then we ended up pulling back down to 45.23. 45.20 area, and it managed to bounce out of their breakout eventually above 47.10, and make all-time highs at 48.08. So I think that would be a reasonable target to the upside as a first target. And again, previously we did not touch anything really above 46.30, so that is a pretty good candidate for a solid trade setup there, where you won't really have to sweat too much. You know, if you see that breakout on the hourly, you can go for it and feel confident. And the risk to reward ratio on that setup there is pretty nice too. You'd pretty much be risking, 30 points to the downside versus targeting 70 to potentially 90 points to the upside. And again, that would probably also, I would have to mention, that would probably turn into a swing trade. Intraday, as you know, ES likes to move in 20-point increments, sometimes more, but ES is not like NQ, where NQ can move, 250 points up and down in one day. ES is a little more mellow. Sure, I've seen it move, 100-point increments in a day before, but you need some kind of volatility to back that move up. So I'm saying, the setup, in terms of sparingly, that setup is a conservative, a safer side rather than trying to go long here, because I'll give you an example. Let's say we do go long above 45.65. Automatically, we'd either have to be willing to risk 65 points off the rip, where we set our stop loss to 4,500, because that is the only level of support that if and when it breaks, then it's kind of that green light that, hey, you might be getting that continuation lower. There's no reason to hold a long position. And then on top of that, so you go long at 45.65, and let's say you're targeting 35 points and then another 30, so 60 points. You're targeting 60 points, possibly, right? There's no certainty to that, possibly to the upside towards 46.30, and you're risking 65 points at a minimum to the downside. Make it make sense. It doesn't make sense. So in terms of signal wise, I'd like to avoid that. I'd like our chances better either below 4,500, and again, you get that clear green light that you're coming down to the next, breakout level, the next support, which was this breakout at 44.30, 44.40, or you get that breakout of 46.30, and again, you can comfortably target 47.10. Everything in between, I mean, if we do end up signaling something, it would be in terms of, momentum in the moment it's pushing. I definitely have, a few setups on the 1 hour, on the 15 minute, but none of them are signal worthy, I would say, because there's too much risk involved. It's one of those, you could scalp this all day between the channels here. You can scalp this all day, but in terms of being a sustainable trade, I wouldn't say it is. So because of that, we're not really signaling anything in between. But I'll give you an example. So, well, no, hold on. All paths are leaning to 4,500. Um, yeah. So if you go above 45.65, for example, or you could go long at 45.80, right? And let's say your target at 46.30, you can set your stop really, really tight to 45.50 and inch it up. But just know that, if on the smaller time frames, especially on the 1 hour, or even if you get a hiccup, like on the 15 minute, I'll show you in a moment, but on the 1 hour, as soon as you get that break below 45.65, that long that you took here is invalidated. You cannot hold on to it. The only reason you would be holding on to a long, if and when price dips back below 45.65, is hope. And that's not a strategy. Hope is not a trading strategy. So we'd like to go for more secure points. And again, on the 4 hour, you could see it very well right here as well. The low that I was talking about around 4,500. It's 4501.77, but really 4,500. You get that break, you short it, and you again target to the downside, clear as day, 44.30. This is what I mean in terms of scalps. I'll break it down to the 15-minute. You would probably see it better. So for example, a good scalp would be you go short below 45.65 here, and your first target would be probably the wicks right here of 45.55. Again, you're targeting what, 10 points to the downside with a tight stop loss. It's doable on ES. You could do it, but it's not something I'd recommend, just because it also could stem into creating bad habits. But I have to point this out. I know there's some traders out there that like that scalp life, that might say, oh, but Nick, you could trade between the channels that we're in. You don't have to wait it out, and that's true. I do want to make that point that it's true. You can very well do that, but the risk there that's tied into it, along with what kind of habits it create, and depending on what kind of a trader you are, there's too much that goes into it to kind of apply it to everyone. Whereas in we take the safer approach, that kind of, everybody could rock with that. That's why, we're breaking down these scenarios. So that's with ES. I mean, the upside, downside, we cover that. Scalp life, we want to kind of avoid that. So let's see. Before I leave off on ES, let me set my alerts as well. I'm gonna set them at 4630. And again, it might not trigger this week, and that's okay. That's okay. 4630, and then 4500 would be the next one, and that would be this level right here. At the same time, I'm gonna change around the colors. As you know, in terms of direction, I like when my channels are yellow. Stands out from the red, so I know if this starts breaking down, we may be getting a move in terms of direction. Whereas in, let's say, the red level starts breaking down, I get an idea that we're probably we're probably not doing anything significant. It's just probably shifting between floors. So for example, right, we're going below 45.65. Again, gives us the green light to come down to 4500. Not a certainty though. Doesn't won't dictate direction. Below 4500, okay, yeah, sure, you can ride that out. And again, you could take the chance here and short this, and you could. I'm not saying you can't, but the odds of you getting stopped out, or the odds of you inevitably getting hit before that move plays out, it's pretty high. And if you want to take that on yourself, go for it. But that's a little too rich for my blood. 4500 downside, 4630 upside. Again, target to the upside 4710, target to the downside 4440. That's with ES. Moving on to NQ. Same thing. Just to break this down real quick, we used to rely on these lower highs, lower lows in terms of direction, and I will say they still do apply as support and resistance levels very well. But we're trying to focus on the more recent trend, on what's happening in the now, not what happened before, and we can't tell the future, so we have to look at what's happening in the now. Again, one thing I do want to cover while we are on the 2-year daily is the first upside target I was looking for is 16,450. The reason for that is I can even blow it up on the 3-year to show you that this was the first all-time high right here at 16,452 really. And then we pulled back all the way down to 15.9, and then ended up breaking above and making all-time highs at 16,767. That's why I think that the more reasonable direction or target that we can take really is, as long as we're above 1650, I think we should have no issue really targeting, 16,450. Now, the safer bet, right? We can go long above 1650. However, we'd have to keep that stop loss really tight, probably at 16,000. Or if we're trying to swing it to feel a little bit safer when we're sleeping at night, might lower that risk and set that stop loss to 15.9. So that'd be about what we're risking 150 points to make 350 points. Those are good odds, but again, it's not quite reassuring because we still have the previous session highs that we made last week of 16,173. So there's a few ways we can go about it. And let me just go ahead and clear the slate so you guys could see also how and why I plot, the SNRs. Let's go into 1-year daily and let's see what we have going on here. Right, so we want to identify the channels we're really in between. So let's start with the all-time high. Well, right here at 16,173. Then I'm gonna place this one right here basically at 1664. I would place this one, but these levels, on the daily, it looks all scrunched up right now. But once we start breaking it down to the 4 hour and 1 hour, you're gonna see it should make sense. So I'm gonna plot this one out right here as well. This is a lower high that we made. And then base support in case we start breaking down from the lows, and this is important too. I'm going to just mark this off for now. These were the last low, similar to ES, how I showed you guys on 4,500. That was the last low before we had that breakout of 44.30, and then we had that soar that we never retested. Same thing going on here with NQ. It's at 15.8. That's why in the previous sessions I've been calling out if we get that break of 15.8, sure, we can go ahead and take a stab at shorting it. Everything here in between, trying to short the moves, it would be kind of on chance, and that's tough. That's tough to call out. We're not trying to scalp here. We're trying to sleep okay. And we're trying to have proper habits and proper risk to reward um, ratios. So below 15.8, we're probably going to get the green light to come on down to, I would say, the level's at 15,460 really, but I would say 15.5 to be sparing. I know Carlos has been eyeing specifically, well, maybe not 15.5 actually, maybe 15.6, and the reason I say that is because we actually retested 15.5 on the daily. This candle right here counts as a retest. So if anything, we would come down to 15,614, and if that level manages to hold up, maybe we get a bounce in that area. I think it's also a coincidence. Well, not a coincidence, but I think it's interesting that on the daily, we have my 20-day EMA and it lines up to 15,609. Okay, fair. So we've identified all of this on the daily. Now, in terms of direction, what are the key levels that will give us direction? I'm going to go ahead and highlight them in yellow, and it's going to be basically the previous all session highs and this last low that we made at 15.8 that we never got a chance to retest the breakout of 15.6. Okay, it looks a little messy. Let me see. Does this extend anywhere? 15.722. Yeah, that was the original kind of, level that we broke out of. So I'm gonna leave this alone for now. Well, you know what? We'll make it white so that we can be cautious with it. So that way, if 15.8 breaks, I think this would be a fair first take profit around 15.720. I think that would be fair. And if price can show that it has the strength to continue on lower below 15.722, really 15.7, we would definitely be able to ride out shorts down to 15.614, that area here. So let's break this down to the 4 hour. Let's see what's going on in between. Okay, so it does look messy. Let me see if I can clean it up a bit. I want to keep this level, and at the same time, I do want to keep the all-time high. So let's think a little right now. If we go long at 16,170, right, and we target 450, 16,450, we're roughly targeting, to make about 320 points, 330 points, and then our stop loss, the nearest support would be at 1650. Again, if we want to sleep safely at night, it would have to be at 16K. So technically, we'd be risking what, 170, 175 points, let's say, to the downside to make 330. Okay. That's not bad. That's not bad. I think I'd like I think what we might end up doing is if it ends up breaking above 1650, I think we should take a chance at maybe taking a bite going long there, setting our stop to maybe 16K, maybe even 15,950. We would move those stops quickly, and then if we can manage to get to 16,173, we get a continuation, we can end up holding that position, and that would be a nice ride upward rather than skip out on an extra. I'm just thinking on an extra 100 points, from 1650. I'm just thinking in terms of what would kind of be the best scenario because there's a few things we can do. So to lay it out, I guess simply, the safer bet in terms of trade setup would be you go long at 16,175. You set your stop loss to, unfortunately, it would have to be 16,000. Your first target to the upside would be 16,450. The minute you cross above 16,200, I would tell you guys probably to inch that stop loss from 16,000 to 1650, and then and then you can ride it out. Once you get above 16,200, you can keep inching that stop loss probably every 30 points if you want to be safe. If you want to take a little bit of risk, you can bite on that long above 1650. Your stop loss again, I would set it to probably 15,950. And in the back of my mind, what I would keep in mind is if we end up breaking slightly below 16,000 or the hourly pierces below 16,000, I would probably end up closing out that position because it would end up being a position on hope. It would be inevitable that you would probably get stopped out at 950 if and when price, breaks below 16,000. So that's two ways to play to the upside. So I'm gonna go ahead and first I'm gonna set my alert at 1650. I like the odds of that because again, in the back of my mind, we're technically, if we go long at the session highs, we're leaving 50 points. Excuse me, we're leaving 100 points on the table. At the same time, I'm gonna retract 1650. I'm gonna set my alert at 1665. I think that's where the exact level was. So that way, when we break that, go long above that, we'd risk probably 65 points on that setup there. Hopefully, it wouldn't stop us out. And that's based on momentum. But again, the safer one would be, you break 16,175 and you calmly go long and you target 16,450 with a stop loss. Again, that stop loss has to be just a little bit wide because of the recent supports. And again, if you want to sleep safely, I would put it at 16K. If you really are trying to swing it, and price action would have to, show us that it's really above 16,175 for us to kind of want to keep that stop loss close. But let's say, for example, we're starting to kind of what's the word, stutter. We're starting to stutter around 16,180, 16,200. Prices kind of looking slow. I would tell you guys probably keep that stop at 16K, and as soon as you break below 16, back below 1650, I would just probably exit out of that long setup. In terms of downside, again, you can see short. Wait, let me set this alert. 1665. So that's upside. In terms of downside, sure, intraday, you could take a stab at, shorting below 15.9, but you don't want to do it, man. It's such a crazy whipsaw, territory between 15.8 and basically 16.170 173. Last week when I was looking at, price action, I was checking in on the 15 minute, on the 5 minute, because the hourly wasn't really giving us too much, and it was just crazy whipsaw moves between these channels here. Again, the question just comes down to, do you want that risk? And I kind of don't. I mean, we could, here, I'll give you another example because there's many ways to trade this. There's many scenarios. There's really no such thing as wrong. But if you break below, 15, what do I have here? 15,917. Really, it's 15,900. You want to break below that round number because I've seen scenarios where you get a breakdown of these lows, for example, of 15,9, what is it, 12, and then we come down to 15,9, and just because it's that round number, we get a bounce in price action. So I think the for sure, you know test bite you can do is below 15.9. You could go short, you can target 15.8 to the downside, and then have a super tight stop, maybe at 15.930. Because again, honestly, if you get back above these higher lows of 15.917, you can already assume that you're going to get stopped out of your short position. So that's why, again, that's one way to do it. It's just it puts you in it puts you in a position where you have to hawk price action. You might not sleep well, and again, it's a tight range. Whereas you wait for the breakdown of 15.8, you can probably calmly set your stop loss, to 15.850, maybe 15. See, so 15.830 roughly was that previous low. I would maybe set my stop at 15.8. 850. And my first target to the downside would be 722, 15,722. It was this previous lower high that we managed to break out of, make a higher high, and continue on higher where we are now. So if we manage to come down to here, that would be the first take profit. If for whatever reason this support level starts to break, the next take profit would be 15,614, and that would be kind of the last take profit I would target, because again, I don't think we end up really below 15.5. Anything can happen, but I'm not leaning in the direction that we end up below 15.5. That's a bit much, considering we only have to just retest the breakouts of 15,614 on NQ, and on ES the breakout level was 44.30. So again, in terms of downside, we get a break of 15.8. We could take that short, targeting 15.722 to the downside, stop loss at 15.850, and second take profit at 15.614. If for whatever reason price starts to stutter around here on the 1 hour, on the 15-minute, I think it's acting funny, we'll look to exit. And if we get a breakdown of 15.722, maybe we take a shot at shorting it to the rest of the move to the downside here, possibly. We'll see. We'll see how it ends up. So downside, let me make the alert at 15.8. And I also am going to show you the scalp scenarios on the smaller time frames. I know some of you guys still like to trade, between the smaller levels, and that's fine. Um, but I'll just give you my opinions on that. So let's go to the 1 hour. And one thing I want to do is I want to clean this up. This is already bothering me. So what is this? 15,917. I don't really need it here, because I know that below 15.9 we're going to end up lower. Also, I partially want to clean up the chart a bit, because the channels that we're in here right now on the 15-minute, maybe we find a setup here right now. I kind of see one, but again, this is not recommended. I don't recommend this. This is why Guard does not signal these. It's not sustainable, but I'm just going to point out that it's doable. So initially, right here, this was your short signal just now, below 15,980. And the first take profit is probably going to be in this area here of 15,942. I would say 15,950. Price action has some kind of it really likes the channel of between 15,915 and 15,980. I'm probably going to stop saying 15 and just say 980 or 960, because it's a little redundant. So below 942, right, we could probably assume that we're going to make our way down to 916, right, which was that level of that low that we were just looking at on the 4 hour. Okay, so we have downside targets, but the question is, when you do these kind of trades, what is your stop loss? Where would you say, hey, it's over, this trade is probably going to reverse? There's two ways to do it. One way, at least when I used to scalp, is because I really had a bad habit of leaving trades running on hope. So one way, excuse me, I need to take a sip of this. One way is, right, we have this resistance here at 15,981. If the 15-minute breaks above 15,981, I'm out of that short position. I don't care, because what ends up happening is you're going to get that position peaking above here, and you're going to think, they're going to sell it back down. They won't sell it back down. They're probably going to bring it back up to here. Now you're going to be really in a drawdown. And again, you could have your stop loss here. You could, but again, that drawdown is going to sting just a little bit. And again, it's inevitable. The minute you get back above 5980, it's going to be inevitable that you come up to here. So that's why I like to, especially on the smaller time frames, I like to just cut that position. No chance for hope, running on that trade, because hope kills a lot of traders out there. I suffered with that for a few years, because it was too much. I had too much of a bias. I don't know. I felt like maybe I had something to prove to myself. Maybe it was ego talk, but that's something I try my best to avoid nowadays. Don't leave a trade running on hope. It was just like, when we signaled ES last week, and we were able to get out at break even. Yes, we were pointing to the downside, right? We're at 970 on NQ, and ES is actually at 59, so we would have been up 5 points. But the whole time that trade would have been running, it would have been running on hope because there's no certainty to how we would have opened up now. It's easy to say now, well, yeah, we would have been up 5 points, but you don't know that beforehand. So that's why when scalping on the smaller time frames, if I can eliminate hope as fast as I can, I'll cut it right when we break above, a small resistance level. Because again, it's usually inevitable when they get a peak above these levels. It's inevitable it's going to come up to the next resistance level or the next support level for as long as price is in between there. Sometimes it might mess with you. It might, stop you out. Let's say you set your stop loss at the next closest resistance, which is at 1625 on the 15 minute. They might just stop you out, bring price up to 1645, and give you a nasty ripper candle down, and you'll be like, what the hell? That means one of two things. One, you shouldn't probably be scalping in the current area that you're at. It's just too unpredictable. Or two, you could have maybe went on the higher time frame and had a wider stop to let them kind of do that. Again, I'm just saying there's different ways to do this. I'm pointing out a different way. You could trade this. We could scalp this right now, definitely, but it's not sustainable. In the end, it really is not sustainable. It's very tedious. It's high stress. You got to keep watching the price action here. So, like, again, for example, we can short this and we can target 15,942 easily. But the minute we get back above 980, we got to basically exit out of that position. You're willingly ready to basically throw money away. Not my cup of tea. And again, we can break this down on a 5 minute. 5 minute is also great for looking for these scalps. Um, Once you're really kind of, I guess, dialed in, with price action, or let's say you have a decent area where this is happening, it's very nice to play these kind of moves on the 5 minute, on the 15 minute. But again, right now, I mean, I feel like I can't give you that green light partially because it's also not something that Gar Capital really does or go through or targets. Gar Capital, we want the better return, the one where it makes sense when you're looking at it, and it's basically telling you, yes, short me, or yes, go long here. Here, it doesn't scream that. It's just asking us, hey, what do you want to do? You want black or red? Which one? And Gar doesn't roll that way, but this is one way to do it. On NQ. I just have to point it out. Also, when you're breaking it down on the smaller time frames, it tends to be a little messy, right? When you pull it back up on the 1 hour, it's just you have a bunch of these lines, messy. Um, but I mean, that's all she wrote for now. So I mean, that's one setup there. Or like for example, let's say we break below 917 on the hourly, right? We could have taken that bite. You're going to come up on probably 900 as a psychological support resistance level. If for whatever reason you do break down, your first target is going to be 886 to the downside. Again, but when these moves are playing out, I'm trying to stress that there is no certainty between them. They're just kind of levels that you think you see. That's as best as I can explain it. You think you see them. I mean, it looks like they're there, but in the end of the day, they can do whatever they want. Meanwhile, the levels that we're looking at on the higher time frames, that really is more of a direction because you can see on the bigger time frames, you get a bit of certainty when you're breaking down or breaking out of those levels on the higher time frames. Question: do you guys want to take a look at crude or gold? VIX is very tame. You know what? Let's take, what do I have? Oh, I have gold. I have gold up here. Okay, we could do that. Let's take a look at gold. Let me pull it up on the 1 year daily. Okay, so right away, this stands out to me right here. Um, no, I'll leave this alone. I would point this out. This looks, actually, yeah, this is a pretty badass level right here, 1980. Right, we keep looping back to this level. And I'll show you guys why. 1980 right here. So It wasn't quite the high here, but it acted as a nice support here. Resistance, this was a false breakout, so this is resistance, resistance, support, resistance, resistance, support, support. So this is a badass level. Okay, sweet. So we identified basically a channel here. So let's mark it up and let's mark it up and tag it up. So perfect. I'm gonna have to break this down on the 1 hour, and then we'll place the alert. But I have 2019.10 as our closest resistance level, and then our support is 1980.30. Let's go ahead and make them yellow. Yellow for direction. The red ones are just regular support resistance levels, and I want to point out the low here. 1935 might be a stretch. 1968, yeah, I mean, you have it tagged here, here, here. I'm gonna leave that alone. I'm just gonna plot this lower level right here as the base, 1936.30, where we bounced originally, and let's start breaking it down to the 4 hour. Okay, so what do we have? Okay, so starting with this, the 2040 level. See, no, I would plot it, but what's going through my thought process is you're gonna muddy up the chart because here in between, again, you could look for those setups, but it's not really enticing to do anything here. And every single time we've gotten in between this channel, notice that price action ends up doing something else. Let me extend this to the left. So like last time we tried, couldn't get up here. Last time we broke out, came back down, couldn't get out of here, chopped a bit here. When we were above it, we did fine, but then it ended up going back down below it. So yeah, so this is just proves a point. So let's set our alert at 2019.10 to the upside. 2019.10 at or above. And when we get a break of that, I think a first take profit for us, a reasonable one would be 2045. 2045, maybe even 2050. I'm looking at this area right here. I'm going to mark this off. Um, I'm going to leave 2063 alone and I'm going to mark off 2085 for now. So this would be probably our first target, our stop loss, 2019. Let's look at the 1 hour to kind of see where a decent stop loss would be. So we have 2011.70. What's this? 2009.20. Now, I would probably put it at 2010.50, somewhere in between here, because if we dip back below 2019.10, it's not necessarily 100% that we're going to end up coming down to 1980, but the chances are higher. We might just dip down below and kind of come back out of there. But if we end up breaking below, I would say the stop loss at 2010. I think below 2010 kind of gives you that green light that, hey, you know what? Price cannot kind of hold itself up. We're probably sinking lower. And again, we don't want to keep a trade running on hope. So exit out of that and let it fall back down to 1980, see what it does from there. But that would be the move, either above 2019.10 and you target 2045, 2050 area with a stop loss at 2010, or we get a break below 1980, and again, we can have the first take profit. We can target the previous higher lows. We can target 1966, 1958, and then 1942 to the downside, with a stop loss above, yeah, since 1980s, that martyr level. I would set it at the first low, yeah, at the first higher low. So 1987, I would set it at 1990. Give it that three point leniency at 1990, and yeah, that would be my short to the downside. Um, Doing anything here right now, I don't see it. So let's do 1980. And that's it with gold, really. That's should be, yeah, that's it. We could break it down to again, we could, but I rather not get into it. Let's see, 5 minute. Yeah, like this technically is a breakout on the 5 minute, right? You could go long and you could ride it out targeting your first take profit at 2008, but it might not play out because in the next 15 minutes, maybe in the next half hour, gold might end up closing below, 2004, and then you have to end up, exiting out of your long position. So, it's very fast paced when you're trying to scalp. So let's avoid that. But I had just had to point out that the possibility to do it is there for GC. So let's reiterate really quick. Upside, we get a break of 2019. We can target 245 to 250. Downside, we get a break below 1980. We can target the previous higher lows of 1968, 1958, then 1942, ultimately, targeting 1936 if that was to play out. That's with GC. And last but not least, I think let's go over crude and we'll call it a wrap there. CL. CL, we missed a few moves last week. Last week, it was perfect. We came up to 78.40, just 20 points shy of the alert, and ended up rejecting down hard. But let's see what we could draft up here. Okay, let me clear this up again. And the reason I clear this up is so you guys can get an idea of why I plot certain support resistance levels, what my thought process is to them. Um, so what are we on? We are on the 1 year daily. Okay, perfect. Let's identify kind of the channel we're in between more or less. Right away, I do want to point out the floor here. I do have this wick on my mind, so I'm gonna go ahead and trace it through right here. This level right here is 77.66. It's interesting. I'm gonna keep it up because last time we got above it, we made it all the way up to 79.76 before rejecting back down below 77.66 and ending up coming down to 72.37. And again, we ended up coming up to 77.66. We attempted to close above it in 3 candles, could not do it here, here, or here. Well, we did it here, but it was a false, I guess, breakout because we ended up closing below 77.66, and now we are just floating in between 77.66 and 72.37. Okay, so that's what we have up on the daily. I'm looking at this area here, 74.92, 75. Probably we're going to get a better idea of what kind of levels these are here on the lower time frame. But before we do that, in terms of direction, let me just scan out, if we break above 79.76, we may end up coming up to this area here towards 85. I'm going to leave that alone again. And then if we end up ultimately breaking below 72.37, we may end up coming down to the areas of 67.13. Okay, I'm gonna leave that alone. Again, I don't want to mark off too much on the chart. We want to kind of look at the now. So I'm gonna leave these alone, but 85 and definitely 60, what's this level off the wick? 66.86 are kind of the big zones that price action has to break out or break below if we want to see more direction. Uh, let's see the 4 hour. What's going on here? Okay, so now we're at 74.92 again, and now it's a little more interesting. So 74.92, I believe what looks like is it's acting as a guidance level, meaning as long as price is above that level, we're probably going to lean towards the previous resistance of 77.66. And if and when we do break below it, as long as we close below 74.92, price would most likely end up leaning down towards 72.37. Okay, cool. Would I short it here at 74.92? Probably not. The only reason I say no is because you can target, your first take profit has to be the previous higher low of 73.80, and then your second take profit is 72.37. But the reason I say no is I don't think the risk to reward ratio would pan out very well here. You don't really have anywhere valid. I mean, you can set your nearest stop loss to 77.20, but you would have to start breaking it down, on the smaller time frames where we need to do that because 75 is that level. But again, it's not a setup worthy level. A setup worthy level would be something, you get a break of 79, 76, and again, eyes closed, you can target 82 first, then 85 to the upside. Similar here, 75, you're risking about 200 points to the upside to make what? You're targeting barely 150 to the downside, and then ultimately, all in all, it's barely 250 points to the downside. So the risk to reward ratio here is screwed. So I would much rather go long, let's say above 79, 76. You can target 82 off rip right away, 81.50 even first, and then above 81.50, really, you should have no problems coming up to this 84.90 area because that's where the channel ends. Now, again, below 74.92, we could take that stab, but it's just not adding up. If I was to really short, I'd short on the breakdown of 72.37. You could set your stop loss, maybe uh, not even 100, maybe 70 points above entry, and then you can target, the levels all the way stemming down to 66.82. So I'm gonna go ahead and set an alert here at what do we have? 72. Oops, one second. 72.37. 72.37. That's where we're going to set our alert to the downside, and upside, I would set the alert 79.76. 79.76. Okay, before we leave off on it, let's see on the 1 hour what's going on here. Yeah, so same thing. I mean, you have both of these scenarios where you could go long above 77. Your first take profit would end up being 78.42, and then second take profit 79.76. But your risk to reward ratio is screwed up here. It's not I wouldn't say sustainable. You would be entering a position on chance, which is cool if you want to do it that way. But just know that, for example, if you break 74.92, it might not be a bad idea to go long. Just know that if anywhere on the 1 hour or even on the 15 minute you start getting candles to close above that level, you got to get out of that position because there's a chance they bring it all the way back up. And you would end up basically holding on to a trade on hope. Whereas you get a break above here, you kind of don't have enough room to back down from whatever level you're targeting. You're kind of definitely going up towards 82.18, and then above that area, you're coming up to 84.85. Well, 83.60, and then 84.85 to 85 area. That makes sense. Downside is a little more of a clear picture as well. On the 4 hour, right? We break below 72.37. I mean, what's stopping us from coming down all the way down to 66, 67, basically? Nothing. No, not much. These levels don't look strong enough to hold up price, but we'll see what we get. So that's kind of what I'm looking at on crude. Again, look, you're kind of getting a bit of a bounce here. Again, maybe we come up to this level here of 76.25, and maybe price action gets shorted back down. Not sure, but we'll see what we get. Other than that, I mean, that's all she wrote. Let's see how we open up Monday. Let's see if we end up holding 45.40 overnight. If we end up breaking below 45.40 on ES, most likely we're coming down to 4,500. And again, the green light to short is below 4,500. We target 44.30, 44.40 area to the downside. Or if for whatever reason we manage to hold up above 45.65, or even start to break out of 45.80, it may look tempting to go long in these areas, but you're really not going to gain much out of this move here. The true mover is going to be above 46.30, or the session highs of 46.34. I personally would like to go long at 46.30. You can set a stop, 30 points to the downside, or even set your stop at 45.65 while targeting at least 90 points to the upside towards 47.10. That's with ES. NQ. Let's blow this up again. Let me see what played out on the 5 minute really quick. So since we plotted it, what happened was you got a continuation to the downside. Did 886 hit? No. I mean, excuse me, 942. This was our target to the downside, but it's slowly panning out because look, we came up, we started to form a bear flag on the 5 minute. So we're either going to break above 975, and then that's going to end up taking us towards 980, and then above 980, whatever, whoever short is gets basically invalidated, gets stopped out, or this bear flag really plays out on the 5 minute and we continue lower down to 942. Basically, that would be the downside target. This is a scalp though, so we're gonna avoid that. The real setups that we're eyeing at least is below 15,800. First take profit is going to be at 15,720. Then below 15,720, we would be looking at 15,614, where we need to retest this breakout that we did have not came down to retest that level yet, or we break above two levels. We can bite on long above 1665, and we can target have the first take profit set at 16,173 and ultimately target 16,450. Or the safer side, we wait on 16,173 to break, and then we target 16,450 to the downside. Again, with I would say tight stops, and we would move them quickly. Other than that, I mean, that's all she wrote. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you have a great trading week ahead, and looking forward to killing it. Cheers.